Okay, Noah, there are 5 basic things that you need to know about solving equations. First thing, if you have a number like this, or equation like this, and you're trying to solve it, the property that you want to try to use is addition. It's called the addition property of equality, and it means you're adding the same number to both sides. This is one of 5 things you need to know. Okay, and yes, that does just give you x equals 18. Yippee skippy. Nothing too serious about it. At this point, there's not a lot for you to do. Later on, it becomes really important for you to know this. The second thing that you need to know is if you are if you're adding, you can subtract the same thing from both sides. Notice that I'm doing the same thing to both sides each time. This is called the subtraction property of equality. And that gives me x equals 12. Again, nothing special really, nothing fancy going on. Okay. Then there's something called the multiplication property of equality. So here I have what has division and its inverse is multiplication. So to solve this, I would multiply both sides by 3 because this 3 and this 3 cancel out, and it gives me x equals 15. What I'm doing is I'm using the multiplication property of equality. For addition and subtraction, you just add it, whatever it is, 1 time to each side. Subtract it 1 time from each side. With multiplication, you actually have to take the entire side and multiply it by that value on both sides. So all of x divided by 3 times 3 winds up turning into x, and all of 5 times 3 winds up turning into 15. Similarly, if I started off with, let's say, 3x equals 15, and I needed to get x by itself, I could use the division property to divide both sides by 3. And again, when you're using the division property, like multiplication, you're dividing the entire side by that value. And that would give me x equals 5 as an answer. So these are the building blocks for algebra. If you know, add the same thing to both sides, subtract the same thing from both sides, multiply both sides by the same thing, divide both sides by the same thing, you should be okay. Sometimes, though, you have fractions, and there are shortcuts with fractions that you can take and another property that you can learn. So, for example, if I have 2/3 x equals 8, and I'm unfortunately making it hard for myself right now, one of the ways you can get rid of a fraction is by using a reciprocal. The reciprocal of 2/3 is 3/2, and so I multiply both sides of the equation by 3/2. And this is kind of the multiplication property of equality, but it just looks a little bit different because we're dealing with fractions. 3 and 3 cancel out, 2 and 2 cancel out, and so we're left with just 1x. And 1x here equals, well, when you multiply these, the 8 and the 2 turn into a 4, because 8 divided by 2 is 4, 4 times 3 is 12, and so it just gives you 12. But this is using algebra. To multiply both sides of the equation by a reciprocal. So this is still the multiplication property. Of equality. But we're using a reciprocal. Reciprocal. I might have misspelled that. Might have an O there. Which basically means flip the fraction over. So here it was 2/3, now we're using 3/2. So there are other properties, but on the worksheet that I gave you, these are the ones that you're using for the beginning. And your goal is to use these in the right order to try and get the x by itself. I hope that helps.